That's a really good question. No, you're supposed to get extra points.
Your head will just be on the recording.
Between employees and boundaries between employees and students. So, first and foremost, I felt like we needed to clip about why we need boundaries. My house.
I can't. I'm totally paralyzed. I'm on myself. I'm baby stepping. I'm doing the work. I'm baby stepping. I'm not a slacker. Take it out. Look at it. I'm really bad shape. Come on, please. Please. Give me. Give me. Give me. I need.
All right. So we all know how this story ends because Dr. Marvin did not have very good boundaries as house below. So in order to prevent our houses from blowing up, we need to have boundaries. I think an important place to begin when we start with boundaries is to know what our mission is and why our boundaries should fall in line with our mission. So the CDP mission is to help young adults with autism obtain and maintain gainful employment, develop independent living skills needed to live on their own, engage in meaningful social relationships and interactions, progress in their educational abilities, and understand and engage in productive leisure time. So anytime that we feel like we're not sure what the boundary should be or what our purpose should be, I think it's important to reflect back on the mission statement to help guide us in the right direction. If we're not doing any of these things or failing to do them well, then this can be a good reminder.
So we have the mission statement. We also have several other tools that we all need to be aware of when we're thinking about what appropriate boundaries are going to be between us and students, and also between staff members. I wanted to include a little bit about the various codes of conduct and codes of ethics that we are bound to as service providers. There are some that are general to all of us. There are some that are going to be more specific to your various professions and professional associations. But rather, I won't go through all these in great detail, but you can see that all of us, working, providing services like we do in the state of Utah, we have responsibilities such as accurately representing the services, policies, and procedures that we conduct here. It's that kind of careful balance between, so we have we have the advantage of having, knowing that we're the best at what we do, having awards to prove it, so we don't have to worry about boasting and overstating our case. But we do certainly need to be accurate. There's also, of course, following any written policy guidelines. Where do we find our policies? Oh, that's awesome. When was the last time we looked at it? Good for you. Wow. We are committed not to abuse, neglect, harm, exploit, or mistreat our students. Perhaps not surprising, but again, as we'll get to, what do you do if you suspect it? Not use corporal punishment or restraint. So don't do restraint. Maintain the health and safety of clients and program services activities on and off-site. Not commit fraud. And provide services and supervision that align with your skills and abilities. So again, not acting outside of your lane.
Andrew, can I make a quick comment? Attending the NatSat National Conference, it was a breakout I attended on code of conduct, and an example that they gave was a youth program got in trouble with the state because they were allowing for wall sits during routes. And the issue was the staff thought that was okay because it was the students who came up with that rule. If they were late or didn't do what they were supposed to in class, that they would use wall sits. That was not initiated by the staff, it was initiated by the students, but because there were professionals there who allowed that to happen, the program is still put on probation. So it doesn't matter if we don't come up with it, there cannot be any physical punishment at all, whether we come up with it or they.
And so, I mean, as we kind of continue to go through these, thank you very much for that. I think I want to make the point that we have these kind of general documents, and as you can see, our interpretation of them may not be the same as the official interpretation that might hold up in court or licensing reviews, or even among your own supervisor. And so, what we're going to try, rather than spending a whole lot of time on the written rules, we'll try to provide best practices to in good ethical, good boundary decision making. And again, just kind of moving on. So we also have what clients' rights are: treated with dignity, free from potential harm or acts of violence, free from discrimination, abuse, neglect, mistreatment, exploitation, fraud. They have privacy guarantees that we need to respect. They also need to be allowed to communicate with family and other supports, unless there is a very good reason not to allow that. And then, of course, to be informed of any policies that affect them. And then, of course, we all have the responsibility that if we suspect that there is a breach of any of these, that we make sure that there is a report made. And again, we'll kind of go into some more general best practices for applying these kind of things, because they do very legalistic language that can be very hard to apply in the day-to-day sense. But just kind of, again, be aware, what other codes of ethics or codes of conduct other than the Utah state Utah provider code are people in here beholden to? Sure. There's certainly going to be other, other laws and statutes that are going to play. Sure. What other codes of conduct? Yes, was the NESW, National Social Work. We have our own code of ethics. Right.
If you have a license,
Your license.
there's code of conduct, there are
JCA.
Marty, what about like NAPSA? That one.
organizations that there's code of ethics.
And so, since we're accredited, are we beholden to their code of ethics?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so there's yet another kind of set of things for us to be aware of and implementing. And, if I'm not sure, imagine people who who are teachers may likely have various codes of conduct and that sort of thing that they need to be aware of. And rather than go through all of those here and now, that would be something to do kind of in your individual department meetings. That'd be a valuable exercise to revisit those and kind of evaluate how we're doing in meeting these. And sometimes our lofty and high ideals, and sometimes are quite practical. Yeah, so this is kind of what scenic use policy is. It just says that not only do we have these broad ones, but employees are to adhere to their professional commitments as well. So we have a lot to. I think we do well.
Okay, so this first video is on the professional ethics in the workplace specific to scenic view. So we'll watch this and then discuss it a little bit.
You moved it to the end.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think?
The first of our direct service principles is professional ethics. Ethical standards are bare minimums for treating students appropriately. Being ethical means that we never catch ourselves doing any of the following: harming or threatening to harm students, engaging in sexual acts with a student, failing to arrange for medical care, denying sufficient nutrition, shelter, etc. using the labor or possessions of a student for personal gain, bullying, teasing, provoking, or agitating a student, denying a student entry to their residence, damaging student property. These should hopefully go without saying, but our job is to not even get close to them. Student safety and student education are our priorities in all we do. So as you work with students, be sure to maintain the highest ethics in your treatment and interventions. Focus on what will always do the least harm and the greatest good for them. And try to keep your personal emotion out of it, especially if you find yourself getting angry or frustrated. Remember, we're getting paid. We can put up with a lot from the students when we keep in mind that they are people with disabilities and that they are the reason we have a job, the reason we have Scenic View in the first place. Here are a few questions to keep in mind when considering whether you are being professional and ethical. Am I making sure to do no harm? Have I completed the Code of Conduct training? Contact your supervisor for more information regarding the Scenic View Academy's Code of Conduct. Do I know my profession's ethical standards and strictly follow them? Do I review the Code of Conduct and my professional ethics at least annually? Am I always aware of student safety? Is it a priority in all I do? Am I aware of emotional safety as well as physical? Do I check in with a coworker regarding my actions and approaches if I ever have any questions or concerns? Do I know and follow SVA policy and procedures in all cases? Do I know my role, my job duties, and my professional limitations? Am I setting and keeping appropriate boundaries? Boundaries will be the next principle we discuss, and keeping proper boundaries will help with keeping everything ethical. Before we move on from professional ethics, however, it's important to emphasize that these areas are much bigger than scenic. Many of these have legal consequences to them. None of us have any authority to ignore professional ethics. They are the foundation of student and staff safety and must be part of all we do.
Okay, so what are some of the do's mentioned in the video, things that we should be doing according to our professional ethics? We're up there. Do no harm. Yes, wonderful. Do no harm. What does that entail? Control your temper.
Think through what you're doing to see if it will cause harm in the long run.
Yes. Did any of these stand out, or does anybody have any questions on some of these do's? I mean, remember we're being paid, stood out to me. Because if we keep in mind that we're, yeah, okay.
I like the checking with a coworker or supervisor because sometimes these things are unclear.
Right.
And it's helpful to get other people's input.
I agree. A lot of times we think of them as just being black and white, like do not, engage in sexual relationships with students or do not hurt students. But there are also a lot of gray areas that we have to work through, and making sure that we check in with supervisors or coworkers can help us stay out of those gray areas. Yeah.
I think if we collaborate with the other staff that work with particular students and work as a team, we're more likely to check each other or know that we're doing something that's hopefully positive for the student.
Right. And I think if we ever feel like uncomfortable expressing something that we're doing to a coworker, then maybe we're in a gray area, and that's a good indication that we need to get some support. Okay, what are some of the don'ts, the absolutely do nots? The first two are very black and white, right? What about, yeah.
Damage student property?
Yeah. Have you never considered that? Yeah.
The bullying and teasing, I think, can be a great area because some people are just sarcastic, right?
Right.
Like I kind of learned that when I first came here, like we have to be careful with sarcasm with students and having boundaries there. That can be a great area.
Absolutely. I think we need to be careful with our teasing because sometimes we might think that it's a fun banter, but
I know I can be that way of like to banter and stuff like that. Sometimes if I think it's better to err on the side of explicitly saying, I'm just joking,
Yes.
you know, and making sure they're aware that you're joking. And you can sometimes tell by the look on their face whether they don't joke back, right? That, oh, they're not getting it, but obviously being careful with that in the first place, but making it explicit that I'm just joking, we're just having fun, it's okay. Because sometimes even with the they may not grasp that.
Right, and we also never know what is a sore spot for them. You know, we might tease them about something that we don't think is a big deal, but that might be something that they've been teased about a lot or have some hard experiences with in the past. So we need to be careful about what we say and do. Yeah.
So what if I'm sitting at a lunch table with Kelly and I think Kelly's gone too far? Can I have a boundary where I say, you know what, that's her stuff, not me? Or what responsibility do I have at that moment? Right?
Approach her and point out to her, share with her your thoughts and feelings on it. Maybe what would be better way.
Anybody agree?
It depends on how serious it is. Like if it's something that you could lightly at the table right then say, Kelly, you're joking, right? And you know this is something that's hard for the student or whatever, I would be open to that personally. But if it's something maybe that you couldn't say at the lunch table, I would hope somebody would talk privately about it or give some direction.
Yeah, I feel like if it was something more gray, where like everyone perceives things differently, you could maybe change the subject, and then I think it's appropriate to talk to the coworker like at a different time in a private setting. That seems a little more professional.
Maybe breaking ethics by marched into Marty's office and told him all about what Kelly just did.
I think it depends on the level of what's happened, but I think if it's not one of the top two things there or whatever, I think you can kind of approach things with the person first and work your way up. I don't think you always have to jump to the top, but I might just be in self-preservation mode.
And I know we kind of picked on Kelly a little bit, but I think we all
Thank you, Kelly.
tease and laugh with our students quite a bit. I think there's a certain degree that that's support building, but we also need to be cautious about how far we take it. And so thank you, Kelly, for letting us use you.
Anytime.
And I want to bring attention, when you first pulled up the slide, bullet points 1 and 2, we all said that's pretty black and white. I want to add to that, I think number 3 and number 4 bullet points are also very black and white. And that's something, without going into any details, but over the past, CNCU has learned the importance of this. Anytime we withhold any physical needs of students, this is something that state licensing will jump on. And so withholding shelter, withholding food, not taking care of medical needs. If we put a passion project ahead of taking care of medical needs of the students, that's something that CNCU and you individually need to be very concerned of. You continuing in your job is at stake when you're withholding that. So that's something to take bullet points 3 and 4 very, very seriously. It's not a CNCU rule, it's a state and the government.
Right.
Marty, can I pose an ethical question to you?
Yes.
Based on that? Say, for example, you're a work supervisor, and a student says, I want to go back to my apartment. I'm done. I'm just going to go. I'm going back. And you say, no, you can't go back to your apartment right now. You need to stay here and finish your shift. Has there been a problem? Or is that okay?
What would you say?
I'd say let him go back to his apartment. We've had people who, Jeremy goes out and says, well, we'd like to take less bathroom breaks, that kind of stuff. They keep on doing it, but they keep on doing it, and keep on doing it. There's really nothing to do, you know. But you can't say, because there's a lot of times people say, I get people out there that are like, I'm working outside, but now I'm allergic to how do you, what am I supposed to do, do it for you, that's what I do. If they start saying something like, I've got a medical problem, there's one person that keeps on saying, I've got a medical problem in my heart, that kind of stuff. I have a hard time, that's a really gray area. It's hard to do, because I get like, okay, so there's nothing I can do, I just have somebody else help me out.
Yeah, that's a hard position to be in. To feel like they need to be there doing their work, but at the same time, you can't necessarily intend to stay there. Really key to
I think in this situation, thinking about it in terms of like long term, when they're in the workforce out there, basically work, and they're not going to be shielded from consequences. Like, okay, you can choose to go home now, but you won't receive pay for the hours you do not work, and I'll be telling your supervisor, your work supervisor, so they are aware of the consequences, and then it's their choice. So they're taking accountability. You can't just keep them there and just lay it down. Like, you can kind of prepare them for what would happen in the real world. They don't always have a choice, but there are consequences to be aware of.
I don't think also following up with them, if there's a reason that they want to go back, they're like, oh, I need to go get my coat, or like, oh, I forgot to take my meds, like, fine, like, cool, yeah, that's not a problem, but, and also if they're sick and they're going back to your room, like, hey, maybe go check in with the nurse first, if it's like a matter of safety and where they're not feeling well, I think that's different from, I just don't want to be here, then that's when you can work through, but I think following up and figuring out, like, what's your purpose, like, let's work through it and try and make this work for you, so you can still work, but also get your needs met, and I think that way you're including them in that conversation so that they're understanding their choices and what the consequences of those choices are.
And you've not reached me, you're at least, because it's not a choice.
Alright, so if in the case that Andrew said we stood in front of the door or didn't allow them to go back to their apartment, that's actually something we cannot do. We cannot just deny student entry to the residence. So it doesn't really matter what we wanted it is, whether we want them to be at work or in our sessions with us, we cannot tell them that they cannot go back to their apartments at all. So I think that's important to consider, even in maybe how we set up our office. If we put ourselves between the door and them, that might be not quite there, but that might feel like we are not allowing them to. Any other thoughts or comments? So this one is about professional boundaries. We just talked about ethics, but they overlap quite a bit, and this is on professional boundaries.
The second principle of our direct services philosophy is professional boundaries. This is how you keep yourself safe and the students safe by setting and maintaining healthy limits. To consider the importance of boundaries, imagine if suddenly all the lanes on the freeway disappeared. What would happen? You've probably seen it happen on a really snowy day. Traffic slows way down, there's confusion, and the chance for a wreck increases significantly. Having lanes on the freeway is the equivalent of having professional boundaries at work. They help you stay safe and allow you to put your energy and effort into the most important areas. Here's a few do's when it comes to professional boundaries. Do stay in your lane. Ask yourself, what is my role? What do I own? Do avoid gray areas. If in doubt, don't. If and when you ever need clarifications or help deciding if you're in the right lane, check with your supervisor. Do check yourself at the door. Whose needs are mainly being met by this action? If it's our needs as staff, that's a good indication that we are out of bounds. Do align yourself with St. Peter's mission. Understand what it is and what it is not. Do remember, setting healthy limits doesn't just protect the student, it also protects you. Here are a few don'ts when it comes to professional boundaries. Don't act outside your role. This often looks like doing other staff members' job or acting as a parent or friend to the student. Don't get gray. This looks like caring about a student's progress more than the student themselves, or spending too much time with one student. In general, you should avoid friending students on social media or giving them your personal contact information. Don't overinvest in students and their progress. This looks like overworking, which can lead to burnout, or becoming emotionally vested in a student's progress or achievements. These kinds of approaches can often lead to boundary issues. When we don't have proper boundaries, we start to attach our personal sense of success, worth, and pride to the student. This is unhealthy for them and for us. The trick here is self-awareness. It's asking yourself, what's my motive? Am I doing this to meet my own needs, or am I doing this for the student? Setting boundaries creates a sense of stability, a sense of being able to be present with the person we're helping, but still having proper self-care and mindfulness of our personal role and job duties.
And thanks, Ryan, for those super cute videos. Those are awesome. When you sent them over, I was so thrilled. And wonderful soothing voice. Okay, did anything stand out particularly from the boundaries video? Anything that Carrie said that really stood out to you? Okay, then I guess I'll talk. Okay, go ahead.
Well, being over-invested in students. Progress.
Care about them. Love them.
But you know, sometimes you gotta care less.
I think it can be really hard when you, because in a way our job performance is tied to their progress. And so when someone's saying, oh, this student isn't progressing, it can very much feel like it's your fault. Or if something didn't work out, for instance, I'm not as involved with student progress as government progress. So, but I feel like that's bad on a couple of levels, because once you start beating yourself up for things that you can't control, like the student's progress, you're gonna start losing sight of what you're doing.
Right. I think you touched on something important, and that is that we have to be able to respect our students' autonomy and their choices and their self-determination. We can do everything that we can to help them, but that we can give them all the tools that we can, but they have to pick them up. And when they don't, we can take responsibility for that. Although it may be difficult because we put in a lot of effort and we invested a lot of time, we cannot take responsibility for their successes and failures and still maintain our own mental health, right?
But Amy, what if I just got a poor performance review or a mediocre performance review, and so I decided I'm going to double down and work harder? That's all that matters. I just wanted to highlight that. I think that's a place where there's some potential risk. You know, when you're trying to figure out how can I do better, making sure that you're investing in ways that still respect appropriate boundaries and don't necessarily lead to over-investing in a student or overworking. You can see how improving your own commitment, improving your own performance could lead into those areas and cause some problems, especially if you're already kind of a little bit emotionally compromised because you have all the self-doubt and you got to do and have some work to do.
Yeah, I think that. Oh yeah, great.
I think one thing that helps me at least is trying to find where that boundary is as far as caring too much. We have a lot of people in the room that care a lot. We have a lot of caring, a lot of really loving people. I guess to know that when we start caring so much that we can't handle the student not succeeding, so then we start doing things and engage in a way that we normally wouldn't, that starts questioning boundaries. Those tactics actually make it less likely for the student to engage and to have success. And so that helps, at least for me, to pull back and to stay balanced with how I care and just maybe be sad, when the student doesn't do certain things, but still have that hope that they will, but really still respect their autonomy.
And I think that also ties into the checking yourself at the door. You know, really thinking about whose needs is this family fulfilling? Because if we're so invested because we want them to succeed so that we look good, are we doing this in the correct way? Is that how we should do it? Are we spending a lot of time with the student compliments us a lot because that makes us feel better about ourselves, instead instead of genuinely trying to spend that time with the student to help them. I think it's important. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay.
Usually it's a blind spot.
Yes.
So usually what we're talking about, in my career, I've known very few people who are able to come up with this on their own. It usually takes someone on the outside. So if you suspect it or see, we want to do an assessment, usually tapping into someone that you trust and asking them. And I'm thinking very quickly of a case of another program I was asked about 6 months ago to be a consultant to help someone who was way overly emotionally involved, and it led into some great behaviors and interactions with the student. And one thing that I saw as I asked and inquired about what were some of the beginning signs, there's a lot of ways to be overly emotionally involved, but what I saw with this staff member of another program was they were taking the work home with them, and they were so worked up and anxious over the success of the student that they were dwelling on the student, and they hardly had a break, including in the middle of the night, pondering and how to help the student, and talking with friends and family about here's what's going on, and there was no emotional break, and then it led from there into some gray, unethical behaviors as well. So but that was a beginning. So I think that's a sign of how it can start. So definitely recommend that assess, trust in your supervisor, trust in your coworkers. Go to that and say, I'm wondering if I might be a couple steps down this pathway. Can you help me?
Okay, so I just wanted to provide, we talked about kind of some legalistic things, we talked about some do's and don'ts, and I'm glad people were willing to kind of volunteer some scenarios and start to actually applying some things. So I just kind of wanted to make a summary of some of the things we've already talked about, but I wanted to kind of give a few strategies, not necessarily in a particular order, that are worth considering when you have a decision to make or even when you're evaluating yourself. And number one is that, safety of the student and yourself is often paramount. It's rare, I can't think of one off the top of my head, where you're going to have a situation where you're going to compromise safety for some other reason. So it's normally a pretty good first thing to be considering. Second, consider roles and relationships. So, for example, if I am considering an action that someone might take, the implications might be very different with myself taking it, vis-a-vis Aaron, or if or Brian, was taking that action. There's going to be, of course, different constraints, different contexts. So, role matters. Also, the nature of the relationship that I have with that person is going to matter. Amy and I have a social relationship beyond working here, and so things that I might say to Amy in a certain moment might be different and might not actually be totally appropriate for me to go and say to someone else in the program or in the CNQ. Considering motivations, again, Amy is not really well. Is this for you? Is this for them? Is this to prove you're right? Is this to what's really going on in your head? Don't discount your conscience. We can try to logic this out. It says in the video, don't let your emotions play too much into it. I think that's true, but I think we also don't want to discount that Jimmy Cricket, that conscience that that is going to that gut feeling that something's just not right, something's askew, and work from there. Please don't equate the idea. Don't let your emotions get too invested with. Don't involve your conscience. Consult code of conduct. We talked about that. Review applicable state federal laws and regulations. And the big one, seek supervision. Find a supervisor. There's always someone senior to you, or even a peer that you can start having this discussion with. Even Marty has shared that he has people that he consults with when he has things that are beyond him, or even where it's just good practice to talking to someone else. You never want to be in a position where you don't have somewhere to consult, somewhere to go, somewhere to start that conversation. Things are less likely to go wrong if you're talking. If you're keeping it all in and doing it on your own, much more likely that you're going to have a situation. So let's get moving. So we need everyone to apply these by finding a group of 4 or 5 people. And ideally, these groups would be individuals who are not necessarily in the same department as you. So if you get a group that has, live, work, drive, learn, we got that right? And sorry, and clinical, that would be a perfect group. And do your best to get diversity. And we'll hand out some scenarios for you guys to chat about. You guys have a one? You're an architect. Who else? There you go.
Conversation tests the latest dieting trends, exercise regimens, popular culture, ideals of body shape and size, and so on. Everyone seems to be in on the conversation, connecting on it. What potential problems might you want to be aware of in this situation? What do you do?
That's really good.
So conversation about latest dieting trends, exercise, popular culture, ideals of body shape. We're leaving us
but I have worked with the students before, so that I kind of feel like I've been helping them prepare for the internship. And so it really gets difficult, when you kind of see where they're going and where their potential is, but yet at the same time, they do have choices and they have opportunities to decide what they want. And sometimes you want to jump in there and say, hey, what's going on? But at the same time, you need to let that happen with their particular person in employment that's taking care of them. And yeah, I've had some students that have called me,
Hi.
Show the information that you found on social media.
I might screw up a little bit, but so we're not supposed to be friends with current students on social media. So like that's you review the rule and find out, there have been times where there have been people that knew each other before, like we had a guy that worked here that went to high school with Allie when Allie was a student. So he was like, well, do I unfriend her? And when he talked to Karen Davis about it, he said, well, because the relationship existed beforehand, that one case can be an exception, but everybody else, I need to consult him on. So you would probably want to unfriend that. Well, I mean, to me, that would be the first thing, right? If you say, I'm concerned about what such and such is saying on Facebook, why are you friends with such and such on Facebook? So fix your own problem, but then I'm thinking because there's a concern for the student talking to your coworkers or your supervisor about the concern, it's no longer about you. I mean, because you're covering yourself if you say nothing. But you probably need to express that concern to somebody who can help, and then discuss what that's right. Social media making it tricky, doesn't it? It's great.
We did it. We got the answer.
We got it.
Solved it.
Marty says talk it out first, then maybe you decided.
Yeah, cut it out. Don't say anything. Let them figure it out.
Yeah, run it by someone, get their perspective. Here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm wondering, what do you think?
Are there any instances where students should have cell phones? Like, tuning employees?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, does that need to be discussed with the supervisor?
I think so. Sit back, are there situations where it's appropriate? Yes. Are there situations where it's not the best? Yes.
Just curious. I mean, I know it's not a good idea, but like, is there an actual policy, like, do not give your cell phone out at any? So, for transition 3, that class is taught off campus, students have to find their way.
Yeah.
So I put my phone in the syllabus, so students can text me if they get lost and we can go track them down either between me and Ralph. So that's, because that's a safety issue. Yeah. We're sending people out to the community. We want to make sure. Yeah, and I mean, I go visit outpatients, so you kind of have to have a cell phone, have some information.
All right, we're gonna bring it in. All right. How was that as an experience? Stressful. Good. Who had, so there's some where we doubled up, some people will be unique to that, looking at that particular scenario. Who looked at scenario number 1? Okay. Without just reading it to us, can you kind of give us kind of the general crux of the issue and then kind of some things you came to?
Sure. Ours was where a student is doing an internship and they encounter some difficulties, and so they're calling you to kind of help solve their problems. And so one of the things that came up is that the fact that it happens quite a bit, especially with our students. They're going from one level to another, and they're still encountering some difficulties in making decisions or getting the appropriate resources to go to work. So if somebody does that, they kind of have a tendency to call people that they know. And so we need to understand that we're still in our lane. We need to let them address it themselves and figure out how to find the resources, but also let the person that they're working with know that they have an issue and kind of help them to move into that lane.
Wonderful.
Any other insights? I think the one line that I think I want to kind of draw out of that you were talking, very good, thank you, was that you find it deeply disappointing and believe the student has not made a correct choice, right? And that's that opportunity where you're like, okay, how involved am I going to get? How much of a parent am I going to step into that kind of parenting role versus a professional role? Great. Two.
So our scenario was that after having several conversations with student and with family, we received some sensitive information that could potentially be embarrassing for the student. And it specifically poses that you're in a meeting and everyone's kind of at a loss for what to do. You feel like that the sensitive information you received could be helpful for the team understanding and coming to a question of how to proceed. And do you share that information, or what do you do in a situation like that? I think the short answer that we came up with was that obviously it's not appropriate to share any sensitive information. We need to bring up that it could be appropriate if you get permission beforehand from the student, from the parent to share that. And especially like if that comes in a scenario where you may have like a safety risk, you may need to put things in place, but still need to go back and check with parents to get that permission. We also kind of talked like a little bit about how in a scenario like that, you may say based on what your position is that you do know like a little bit more about the scenario, and that you can present what your thoughts would be on how to approach it. But we just thought it was like a good reminder that as staff and knowing what the confidentiality requires of us, that like sometimes we just need to trust each other. If we know that information and we're coming up with like a solution, that it's okay that we don't know, even though we may want to, and even though we may be really curious about it. Just kind of trusting the people that know in the position that they're in, staying in our lanes, and kind of moving forward with what they propose.
different kind of consultation like that.
Does scale matter? Like what you might share about a student in this meeting versus what you might share in like a department meeting versus what you might share in a one-on-one with supervisor? Again, kind of that context also really matters as you kind of move up and down that chain. Thank you. That's great.
Okay, scenario 3.
All right.
Does anyone else have any? No?
Right. So our scenario was, it's lunchtime, we're sitting at a table that has both staff and students. The conversation is turned to the latest dieting trends, exercise trends, ideals of body shape, pop culture, and things like that. It seems like everybody's having a good time and connecting well. Do we run into any problems there? And so we kind of discussed a couple of different things. First of all, you don't know what kind of situation the students and the staff as well might be in themselves. There may be some problems with notes, body image. They may have some sore spots about that. So you kind of have to be careful. Something else is if you have a conversation with students and staff, if staff is expressing opinions about the latest in dieting trends and these things, the students view them from a position of, this is a position of authority. You're saying, you might have to be careful with what opinions you're stating so that may be taken more seriously than perhaps needed.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Okay.
Scenario 4. Does 2 people get 4?
Why? I just got volunteered.
I think I can pick on
You have been spending a lot of time investing in your own mental and physical health, as well as learning more about autism and other co-occurring conditions. This has meant that you have spent hours reading high-quality books and articles, listening to podcasts, meeting with your personal trainer, and have even attended a couple professional conferences where leading experts have presented on the latest research. You are just bursting with knowledge in all of the many different areas of life CNQ is involved with. You now see solutions for every student's problem and have a critique for every colleague. What do you do? So we talked about it. You know, there are several things that could be going on. Over investing in a situation. You know, are you renewing yourself? Are you going to get burned out? Those kind of situations. Also, it's Geico commercial. Stay in your lane, bro. Right? So
great.
Short, sweet, to the point.
And last one, 5.
You're the 2/3 of 5?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You've been sharing online with the student, social media. Good. You're not supposed to do that, or rather that you've noticed that the student is doing something wrong on the social media platform. What do? But you've also been doing something wrong on the social media platform. So do you give out the information anyway? Yeah. What you do is first of all you give out the information first, and then you stop social media. That's what we decided.
And the second group of 5. So we kind of took it differently, but maybe they're not doing something wrong on social media, but maybe they're just sharing something on social media about their life that's concerning to them or would be concerning to us. And maybe you weren't following the exact procedure for following someone on social media. So, but if you have something that can save their life or save their livelihood, then you do need to come forward about it. And you do need to clarify boundaries with your supervisor. And then Andrew came over and we were talking about how
kind of, like everyone just kind of assumed Facebook automatically because we have things about Facebook in our things, but it was like there are other forms of social media. And so maybe we need to clarify, like, because social media can also be promotional. I've gotten LinkedIn requests, I've gotten, you know, things like that. And so it's kind of a gray area that you definitely have to come forward, but we weren't sure on the rest.
It's a really good question. Social media is not, you know, just cut and dry, you know, exactly. And I don't know. I mean, do we have an all-out no policy? And then there's kind of that broader ethical question. You know, your first responsibility would be to follow whatever policy that CNFU has. But I mean, you know, if they were, you know, broadcasting to the world the problem and no one at CNFU knew anything about it, you know, is that a problem? I don't know. I mean, it's ethical tricky.
Marty, do you have any thoughts about that?
So presently, it is discouraged to be connected with social media with a student. Might there be a rare situation where we discussed in our group, there might be a previous connection and relationship with someone? Sure. So there's always those situations. Those are times to involve supervisor as well as it being the personnel matter with Jared Davis would be appropriate as well.
Great. So I think we're going to, we want to, I hope this isn't too much of a good thing, but we do want to jump into one last little interactive piece before we send you all to lunch in the next 5 minutes. So, and this is just, I also want to turn it from students into just kind of a couple parting thoughts about staff and staff interactions and what boundaries might exist there. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read a scenario. I'd like you to send one member of your group to stand beside either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And you will be answering for that person that you send. Remembering context might be different. So that might be Marty, you know, if you send him to, you know, to represent your group, think about what is appropriate for Marty, not necessarily someone else who has different roles and different relationships. Make sense? Okay. So the first one, and I've already asked permission to do this. So you're walking down the hallway and you see Reagan bawling. She's upset, and you decide you're going to go and give her a big old hug. Was that an ethical move? Or an appropriate boundary? Agree or disagree? Go.
Oh my God.
You might just send Reagan out. And that, Candace, I will raise that point, and I think that's where it's any of you who send up, anyone in your group who have that kind of thing. The answer is no. All right, guys, get up there.
Where we're at.
All right, guys, we're all over the place. Perfect.
Wow. Be careful not to go to a full scale.
Yeah. Okay, Aaron, seeing as you might best represent both sides. What are you thinking? What's your thinking? What's your thinking?
So the scenario is funny
because Andrew and I specifically hunted Reagan down to give her a but professional standpoint, probably not a regular thing that's going to happen.
What, so maybe Kylie, you're more to the disagree side a little bit. What kind of things are you thinking about when you're making that decision?
Well, first of all, like your relationship, like I was saying, I'm really good friends with Reagan, but I want to just go up and hug her. Like, I don't think I've ever hugged Reagan before. But maybe I can put down. I don't know. I think it's appropriate to talk to her and see if she's okay, and see if you can provide help. But just to go up and give her a big hug is probably the best approach, not the most professional thing to do.
Is that a hand up or is that a
It was,
question?
but I didn't want to like interrupt someone. So I think it's, everyone also has personal preferences of like, you know, like when there's like physical, like a bubble, or like they don't want to have that out in the open. And so I think it's, you want to show care to her. But you can be like, hey, are you okay? You know, you can take her into like a room and talk to her, let it out there. Because you also like, if there's students around and other staff, and you're trying to be like, hey, are you okay? You don't want her to also just be like, let me share all my life problems with you right here, wherever you can hear. So I think you want to make sure she's okay, but if you're in like a safe space where she feels comfortable doing it and there's not other people affected, and like, oh, did you hear about like Reagan doing this or this?
Candace, anything else to add?
Yeah, so we were kind of going back and forth in our group. We had some that strongly disagreed, that's not okay. And I kind of felt like if you have depends on the relationship with you have with that staff. If I'm a friend to that, not just a coworker, then I feel like I can maybe give them a hug. But it's a little gray, so I don't know. But I kind of felt differently than some people.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think, so I keep hearing like, well, if I'm in a relationship, I'm okay with it. But I think it's really important that we ask the person, is Reagan okay with it? Because some of us are touchers and some of us are not. And so it doesn't really matter what you would do, it's what Reagan would want. And so I think it's really important that we're respecting people's autonomy, and even if it feels natural to us to hug somebody, then maybe asking first, even if you're close to them, is appropriate.
Great, especially in a professional setting where it's. All right, well, I don't want to keep, we have people's comments. I will stay forever. I love this.
I won't. I'll go to lunch.
That's a good boundary.
Wow. I'm identifying my needs. She has different needs. Okay, we'll be right. Good. Okay. I'm just going to quickly read just these other scenarios, just so you can kind of think about them. We want to actually, go through them. So you feel that you see Andrew around, and you feel like he's been too harsh with students that he's working with, and you decide that you need to report that to Marty. Two staff members are in the same departments. They start a new romantic relationship. They decide they're not going to tell their supervisor because they keep work and home separate. You have been having a hard time at home, and it's negative, and you feel like it's probably negatively impacting you at work. But again, you don't mix the work and home life, so you choose to keep that boundary and not to share anything with anyone. And things to think about, things maybe discuss with supervisors as they become appropriate to you. And then keys to consider, I've already gone over them before. It's that whole idea, safety is paramount. And I'll skip down to the bottom one, talk about it. Seek supervision. If in doubt, even if you're not in doubt, there's open dialogues that are going to protect you from a lot of potential pitfalls on this.
Before everybody leaves, this is going to be a Google Classroom assignment on the annual training classroom. So if you are here, all you have to do is go mark them. There's going to be a test that people have to take if they didn't come, and a video to watch. So be happy you're here, but please make sure when it comes out, just mark it as done. You are here.
Thanks for your
Thank you all.
participation.